Creativity is a vitally
Good
important
morning,
skill
colleagues.
for all learners to develop.
Molweni,
We need to nurture
Goeiemorgen.
learners' creativity in different ways, including through the
Sanbonani,
production of our
Dimachironi, Absheni, Khotso. We have started. The time is 8 o'clock. Do we have Mr. Kwase? Mr. Mashamandulo Dixon Kwase. That's how he introduced himself yesterday. Give him a big hand of applause. We honor the program, not the crowd. The crowd must follow the program. Over to you, HOD Eastern Cape. The speakers are ready. The audience is ready, both virtual and in person, so we can start.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. We are starting now. We are still continuing with the sub-theme, equipping teachers with skills for effective classroom practice in a 21st century context. But in this first session, we will be getting views from practitioners in the curriculum re-engineering space, and also focusing on the centrality of an educator. We have two presenters in this session. One will be presenting on the positioning the teacher towards curriculum recovery and skills revolution, and identifying applicable elements of teacher development. As I'm preparing to call the first speaker, who worked in education since 1974 as a teacher, principal, lecturer, also lectured at Johannesburg College of Education, University of Witwatersrand. He joined the legislature in 1994 and was honored to have about 2 terms in education and went on to become the MEC for Agriculture, Conservation, Environment and Land Affairs in Gauteng, head of School of Education at Wits from 2005 to 2009, before he joined the Department of Higher Education and Training as the DG in 2009. He's currently a commissioner in the National Planning Commission since December 2021, an executive director of PILO. He's also a professor of practice at UJ School of Public Management, Governance and Public Policy. That is none other than Professor Mary Melcalf. A big round of applause for Mary. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you so much, HED Khwase. It's wonderful to be here, and I must say that I so enjoyed yesterday. Definitely it was intense, and definitely you went home exhausted. But everyone I've spoken to found different parts of it really captivating. And it's my job today to speak to you, and I'm going to ask for the slides to be put up, on a particular topic. And that topic is positioning the teacher towards curriculum recovery, skills revolution, identifying applicable elements of teacher development. So I'm not going to do the same as I kneeled yesterday and say, okay, I'm giving you 2 minutes, tell me how you would do that in 20 minutes, because it's a very ambitious topic. What I'm going to try and do is to first of all just position this topic in the context of the entire conference and why it is such an important topic. I'm going to do that probably in 2 or 3 minutes. And then I've decided to focus on the anchor principle within this topic, and that is the question of teacher professional development. Because teacher professional development underpins anything we do in terms of the skills revolution, in terms of anything that we do in terms of the 21st century, etc. So that's what I'm going to do. So if you look at how the presentation, I'm going to look here, how does the presentation fit into your day? There's a bigger picture of the Lekgotla. And the bigger picture of the Lekgotla is equipping teachers with skills for effective classroom practice in the 21st, well, today's theme is equipping teachers with skills for effective classroom practice. And when I watched that wonderful panel yesterday, I went home and watched it. Oh, do you need me in the middle? Oh, okay. You know, when I first trained as a teacher, in the early 70s, they said I should never be a teacher because I've got a useless voice. Maybe they were right. So I hope people can hear me better. Okay. So if we look at today's theme, it's all about the teacher, her skills, his skills, and how that fits into the 21st century. And I've looked at the objectives and the expected outcomes of the conference. And I'm going to be addressing 2 in particular, because that fits with the theme. So, I've made asterisks, because in several places in the objectives for the conference, it uses the word accountability. I'm a firm believer in accountability all the way through the system, from top to bottom. But I never use the word accountability without qualifying it to say it must be reciprocal. We all are responsible for what we must do to build education in this country, whether it's a teacher, a principal, whoever it might be. But we are accountable to the extent that we receive the necessary support and resources to do our work. So we're accountable, but accountability has to be in a context of support. So I needed to qualify that, and I can see the DGs kind of agreeing. So the next thing that I want to talk about is just how this presentation fits in the day. I find the DBE Lekgotla so rich in terms of new information, but sometimes it feels like so much information that I thought it might be useful to just step back and say what we're doing today. When I look at the commissions, there's 4 fabulous commissions, or 5, but the commission to which this presentation most strongly relates is on teacher preparation, professionalism, standard setting, governance, and well-being. And I've had a look and a discussion with some of the people presenting in that commission, and you're going to get really rich input. We also have several presentations today that are really going to assist. The first is going to be from my colleague who I spent time with yesterday, Mr. Dlamini, who's a principal. He's going to be talking about innovation. After our session now, there's going to be presentations from people in the OECD about the new professional. There's going to be presentations from Whitty Green in terms of the importance of initial teacher education. And, and then we're going to have Fasiha Solomon. That's in Commission 4. But today, sorry, I misread you there, is today we are going to be in the morning session getting presentations from Ella Machalani, from Andre Schleicher from the OECD, and also from Mr. Dlamini. So there's a morning full of presentations, then into commissions, and I'm hoping that my contribution helps you prepare for the real point of the last 2 days, today and yesterday, which is to debate in commissions. This Lekgotla is about listening as well as, and contributing as well as receiving presentations. So, my first assertion, and I would love to debate if anyone disagrees with me, is that if we want a quality education system that keeps on improving, ongoing professional teacher development is the key. I was particularly aware of that yesterday in that fantastic panel with Eunice Ballum and Moses Simelani, and there was another one with, and Godwin Khoza was in that one. When you look at the expectations for change and for engagement in teachers, it's not going to come by osmosis. It has to come through sustained programs of teacher development. So that's my first assertion. So in this presentation, which I need to do by focusing within the time limits on curriculum recovery, skills revolution, and identifying applicable elements of teacher development, I've got 4 slides left. I hope you find that a comfort. The first one is I'm going to look at the development of teachers' professional judgment over time. I'm going to look at some criteria for professional development, and then in consultation with the DBE, I'm going to focus on the Learning Recovery Program, the Post-COVID Learning Recovery Program, and its guidelines, and how these principles of continuous professional teacher development and criteria for quality professional development are taken forward. So let me start with some assertions again about this point. The development of teachers' professional judgment to effectively respond to learners' needs and changing contexts is lifelong. When I first started teaching, I remember somebody saying to me, some teachers have got lots of experience, but they had 1 year, which they then repeat for 40 years. They change nothing. That is not the characteristic of a professional teacher changing to context. So changes throughout careers. Now, the first thing is there's a very big difference between a more experienced teacher and a less experienced teacher. Growing confidence and new insights. So the questions you might ask as a new teacher are not the same questions that you might ask as a more experienced teacher. And that is because you're reflecting on what's happening in front of you and changing. The second, and again I was very aware of this yesterday, is there are content changes and there are conceptual changes in the curriculum and in the subjects. Let's just take OBE and Curriculum 2005. Teachers should be able to engage as professionals as what is the underpinning difference, what is the conceptual difference, not just the content. So that's what I mean by conceptual changes. Content changes, my goodness. I was quite struck a few years ago when I was understanding tectonic plates. You know, that concept of earthquakes and these things that shift in the world. When I was at school, we didn't know that. Science did not know about tectonic plates. And with the acceleration of knowledge, teachers have to keep up to date in their subject because it's constantly changing, and again, we saw that yesterday. The third thing why teachers have to be continually professionally developing is because the needs of learners change. The needs of learners change socially and technologically. What's this new thing? Chat ITX or something? Huh? Have you tried it? You just ask a question and you get an essay. This has to be seen as an asset, not as something we can legislate out. How do we use this new technology so our learners are able to navigate these new technologies and what they bring? You can't just ban it. You'll never succeed. So our orientation to teaching and to how we view content and process and the management and reflection on information available to be more critical. And socially, things are also, I find, very different, but I'm older than many of you. But socially, there's different challenges. And those social challenges are also different in the different contexts in which we teach. Another controversial point that I might make is I often look at some of our best principals in our best resourced schools, and I wonder how they would cope if we moved them to some of our least resourced schools in the most difficult social conditions. Those people who make a choice to work in a community and in a school that's least well resourced then have a challenge to say, let me understand this environment differently. I'm in a different province, I'm in a different quintile, I'm working with a different community, all of those are subjects of professional teacher development. The next thing that we have to learn is even if you are not promoted through the ranks and you don't become a head of department and then a deputy and a principal, because you are a more experienced teacher, there's an expectation of leadership. And you need to be able to lead and serve and work collaboratively with your colleagues. All of these are opportunities for professional development. And this is an important one for me. Our knowledge of pedagogy is constantly being improved through research. Now, it's not realistic to ask teachers to be reading journals and going home and studying, but we have to find ways through our professional associations, through our representative structures of unions, to constantly be accessing what are the new pedagogical insights. Let's look at something like reading. We've got reading wars about, you know what they are if you're a foundation-based teacher. But there's constantly new science, and it's our job as professionals to keep up to date with that. So the constants are innovation, not the same year of teaching for 40 years, adapting to all of these new requirements, fundamentally as a professional. In that classroom, You need to be able to exercise your agency professionally, and always advancing your professional judgment based on evidence. And I know that I'm already probably too long and I'll hurry, sorry, is that it has to be evidence-based because that's the hallmark of a professional. You can reason what you've decided on the basis of the evidence of pupils' learning. So sorry, Chairperson, I'm hurrying now. My second slide on this topic is I'm going to very quickly, because I think most of these points are very obvious, just talk about what are the criteria of what we would consider effective professional development. So, effective professional development meets teachers' needs that they are experiencing in the classroom. I'm often conscious of how often teachers are called out to training to deal with something that isn't a problem to them. You get it? Yeah. It has to be focused on the challenges that teachers are experiencing so that they leave that session saying, that was so helpful, I needed that. Not, let me get back to class as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair. 3 minutes. So, next one, that links to it being self-directed and teachers taking responsibility for their own development, which means more often, instead of saying everybody has to get the same training, we need to be able to understand where teachers are, what they need, and give them some element of, give the school collaboratively, who needs to go to this training. Now that gives a lot of responsibility to the school level, but I think it's appropriate. The training has to be participatory. It has to give opportunities for reflection. It has to give opportunities for application within the training. I can't tell you how many training sessions I watch where the person speaks like me now, and there's no opportunities for participation. There's no opportunities for really testing what you understand, and you need material for afterwards. The next one is teachers come to training with an existing set of understandings about what to do. They don't come with empty heads. And when they enter the training room, everything they know doesn't miraculously leave their head so that everything you're telling them comes into their head. There's a mix of, but this has always worked for me. Why are you saying that? I don't know if I believe that because this is what works. We've got to engage teachers' preconceptions and help them grapple with themselves identifying what needs to change. It's got to be reinforced in schools. It's got to be engaged with peers in schools because that's who we learn the most from every day of our lives in teaching. And there's no point in training where somebody trains you, somebody else supervises you, but in the supervision they're not reinforcing the training. What's the point of that? So, teachers have to have opportunities to collaborate and to critically reflect, to come back to their colleagues and say, this is what the trainer said we should do. What do you think? Should we try it? Let's try it, and then think together about how effective it was. So my punchline for this slide is that teachers' time is valuable. Please respect it. For teachers to go all the way to a professional training thing, the money that's required to travel, leaving their class, having to catch up, let's make sure that the professional training that we offer deeply respects the contribution and the sacrifice that they make. So, I've only got 1 minute. So, I'm going to go very quickly. The learning recovery program that the TDCM of the DBE and the provinces has worked on takes forward these principles. The teacher is going to be at the heart of everything we do in post-COVID curriculum recovery. It's their work in the instructional core, which is where learning recovery hits the road. All of our deliberations are lovely. It's the teacher that has to do it. So the learning recovery program is taking the approach of saying we're supporting the teacher first of all, by supporting the SMT to support the teacher, by supporting the circuit manager, supported by the subject advisor, to support the SMT, which means that everything that we want teachers to learn and adapt is focused on systemic support within the school and from the district. So the guidelines that will be available are being aligned with provinces. Provinces do lots of innovative work. Different provinces do different things, but the principles of the guidelines will be taken forward under the leadership of the DBE across provinces. And we are pleading that it's differentiated and developmental. So I have to stop, but you'll see that that slide that I'll just leave there explains circuit manager to SMT to teacher, so that we get conditions of applying the learning in the classroom with the subject advisors playing a key role. Thank you so much for giving me maybe an extra minute. Thank you. Oh, do you want me to do this? No.
Leave it. A big round of applause for Prof. Without much ado, I'll request the second presenter, who is an educator. He's going to be talking on innovation in teaching. And I'm happy that is done by an educator and not just an ordinary educator. This gentleman is a teacher in KwaZulu Special School, where he has been teaching since 2013. He is also the departmental head for intermediate phase at the same school. He is an intrinsically motivated individual with a strong need for challenges and believes he is a well-informed person on most issues of life. He spends his time studying and doing research on various issues of life and strongly subscribes to the principle of a healthy mind is a healthy body. His inspiration is to thrive on any circumstance for the development of his character to greater heights. He's an innovative, adaptable, enthusiastic, conscientious, and self-motivated person. He is also one of the winners. In fact, he was the National Teachers Award winner in 2022. In that category of excellence in special needs teaching. A big round of applause for Mr. Kapela Dlamini.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Distinguished guests, I greet you all. Mine is based on teacher as an innovator. Imagine staying in a boring class. We all have been in the classroom. We know how it is to be in a boring classroom. The only thing that you will be hearing is the voice of an educator echoing in your ears. So what's important is that the education field is changing at such a fast pace that we as educators, we need to keep up and adapt. Otherwise, we'll be left out. It will be hard for us to fit in. Over the last few months, during the COVID-19 crisis, we have seen just how essential innovative thinking is for educators when faced with challenges. Whether school leaders or educators everywhere had to apply a rapid response, creative thinking to innovative new ways of reaching and teaching learners. The biggest challenge for any educator is capturing each learner's attention. So innovative teaching, it's where we're using invention and creativity. Teachers must continue to improve current methods and discover better ways to deliver content knowledge to children, expand children's skills, and ensure that children always get the very best learning experiences whenever learning takes place. So there are 4 innovative ways that I want us to look at. That is interactive lesson plan. For many educators, being innovative comes natural in the way that they plan engaging lessons and in their ability to self-reflect on how they improve their own teaching in practice and increase learning opportunities. The COVID-19 crisis highlighted just how innovative teachers and school leaders can be. And using visual reality technology. While schools around the world vary in their access to resources, innovation does not require access to large amounts of teaching materials. To be innovative, a teacher simply needs to be excited by the challenge of creating new teaching strategies to meet the needs of a unique group of learners. In order to do this, we require a great deal of creativity. Innovative teachers are flexible and resourceful. They had a vision of improving the education and learning experience for children, and most of all, commitment to do so. Creative teaching. This is a time-tested method to identify every young learner's creative abilities and encourage creative contributions. Think of ways to develop the learner's creative ideas. Encourage different ideas to give them freedom to explore. A stimulating classroom environment. A classroom environment that is well decorated, fun, and engaging will help stimulate the learner's mind and will help the learners to think and learn better. So that whenever your learners are coming to your class, they must feel happy. They must enjoy to be in a classroom, not the setup that is boring. Such creativity and stimulating environment will help them to explore and will encourage them to learn about the subjects. It may be any subject, not that we always saying we must be based on mathematics and science, but any subject. Also, audiovisual tools. It's important not to just stick on textbooks. We have to incorporate audiovisual materials to supplement textbooks. Such tools will help the learner's imagination to thrive and grow. These methods will not only develop the ability to listen, but will also help them to understand the concepts.
Even in writing and participating fully in teaching and learning, with the technology that has come through, we're going to have more time to do what is expected of us as educators.
This is an example of my class where I incorporate what I am talking about. Also, puzzles and games. Learning is fun. We must not create that learning is hard, learning is challenging. No, learning is fun. So we must keep it simple. Children may not require taking conscious efforts when their lessons are introduced through games. We know that they like games so much. So we must make it a point that puzzles and games are also part of our teaching because they assist the children to think creatively and face challenges. This is an example of the games that I'm using in mathematics. These are puzzle games, and they are very helpful. There are 7 C's that I want us to look at. The first one is creative. Not only are innovative teachers creative people, but what is important is that innovative educators realize the importance of harnessing and nurturing the creativity of their students. Part of this process includes celebrating difference in students and differentiating instructions to meet the needs of the students. Innovative teachers know how important it is to allow students to explore their own creative potential. It must not always be teacher-centered, but it must be learner-centered. Give them opportunity. Collaborative. Innovative educators value collaboration and thrive in these types of settings. Not only does collaboratively to a shared common vision, but it is through collaboration that one gains new insights and perspective. Courageous. Innovative educators are at their heart courageous. They do not view mistakes as a failure. Whenever there is a mistake, but we view that as an opportunity to grow and try again. Curious. Curiosity is a feature that innovative teachers possess. They are natural, inquisitive, and love to explore new ideas, not just to stick what other educators or other people stick on, but we must seek for new ideas. Compassionate is an essential trait that innovative educators must possess. In order to become fully engaged and motivated about learning, students must feel that their teachers care for them. So, compassionate rules. Committed. Above all else, the innovative educators is committed to lifelong learning. Innovative educators are also committed to reflective practice. They recognize the value of reflection has on improving teaching. The last one is change agents. In the article, Characteristics of Teachers as Change Agents, 2005, where the author stresses that innovative teaching can even become change agents. Moreover, teachers as change agents are also lifelong learners. They might be described as teachers who are eager to learn. Teachers as change agents seem to learn from and through their work, from and through their colleagues. They use their agency to take their initiative in order to develop themselves professionally, because professional development is very important, and to improve or change our teaching practice. Chairperson, thank you.
Another big round of applause for Mr. Dlamini. Can I have the show of hands? Any takers? Number one. Number two at the back. Mhlambi uDJ will have to explain this phenomenon that I'm seeing. The last debate around 8 o'clock yesterday was so vibrant with about 6 participants. In the morning, there are only 2. I don't know what it means. Whether people did not have breakfast or they had too much of breakfast. Number one.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Sianda Sikwe. I am a governor at a school for autism. The school is called Mohato School for Autism. It's in Naledi, Soweto. I am also a member of MOKWA, which is Mothers of Children with Autism. In this gathering, I came under NAGA, National Governors Association. I have 2 questions. I have many questions, actually, but I'll just reserve 2 questions for this session, and then I'll have a comment also. I will also take this time just to wave to Department of Education and say, Department of Education, we are a small nation up here, the autism nation. Please look this way. Please look this way. It seems like we are a forgotten nation. Thank you. My question is around the curriculum for special schools, Elson schools. It's DCAPS. It's DCAPS. Why DCAPS? Why DCAPS for such schools when you have autistic kids who present with different abilities? In one class, in one autistic class, you can have a non-speaking, speaking, hyper, children in nappies, children who are still not talking, disabled children, but they all have autism and present with other disabilities. So how do you teach that class? How do you sit them down? How do you sit active kids who can't even sit for a minute? How do you sit them down and make them hold a pencil? DCAPS. Why DCAPS? If anybody can answer me to say why DCAPS. It is frustrating teachers at school. The school that I'm from, teachers have sent me to ask why DCAPS. I would also say, I like what Mr. Dlamini said about learning must be fun, puzzles and games. Yes, I agree, also for autistic kids. If they can't write, the one thing they gravitate towards is technology. They like gadgets. They love gadgets. They might have motor skill problems. They might not be developed yet, but give them a cell phone. They will show you how it's operated. Why are we not making gadgets that will have educational programs for these kids and giving them to our schools? Yesterday, Mr. Lubisi said, reminded us of the 1943 Bill of Rights. Schools must be properly built for every child. Our schools in the township
Please gravitate towards
Okay.
your last question.
It's not a question, it's a comment. Our schools in the township that are said to be Elson schools, they are previously used schools. Now they are old and they do not cater for autistic children's needs. Thank you very much.
Thanks, madam. Number 2. Number 2 at the back.
Thank you. Both the speakers this morning have reminded us of the important role of the teacher in the classroom and how a teacher needs to make learning exciting. So I was thinking, if we look at how much time and money and effort and resources are put into capacitating teachers versus what the system puts into supporting learners, should we not be revising and revisiting our position? And looking then at the teacher is the constant. The teacher stays there year in and year out. The teacher doesn't move anywhere, but a whole different cohort goes through those teachers' hands every year. So perhaps we need to do some introspection and ensure that it's the teacher that gets the support to give the quality, exciting teaching and learning experience in the classroom, that every child wants to go to class, wants to participate, because the teacher is on top of their game. And then we will see the learners coming on board and the learning process improving. So just a thought about how we allocate these resources for support of teachers versus support of learners. Thank you so much.
I see the hand there. That one will be the last one. I don't want people who want to latch on others' questions.
Thank you so much. This will be very brief. During the heady 1990s, there were violent student protests going on everywhere, and Mary went out with her baby on her arm to address the students. And I just thought that was so fantastic. I've just heard that that baby is now a young lady who's graduated from university. But what strikes me about Mary and all the work she shared with us just now is it's always done with kindness. And that kindness and compassion, I think, underpins a great future for education in South Africa. Thank you so much, Mary.
Number 4.
Good morning, and I want to say thank you to our speakers. We are from the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, and our key focus is to ensure that our children with disabilities actually receive a quality education. Now, listening to the two speakers today, for our children to receive a quality education, clearly we need teachers who know how to teach these learners. And what we have found in terms of our studies and in our research is that many teachers who are in special schools, who are supposed to be giving learners with special needs, the support and the services that they require, unfortunately, have not been given the support and development, etc., to be able to support these children. So I just want to understand what is currently in place to ensure that there is, in fact, pre-service and in-service training that is happening for educators, especially those in special schools, and yes, certainly for those in full-service schools and mainstream schools that do actually enroll children with disabilities. Thank you.
Thanks. Can you take that mic back to that to number 3? Just to repeat that question. Where is number 3 now? Number 3, can you repeat your question? Can we get the one from the virtual platform?
Certainly, Chair. Let me make my way back to the system. Thank you very much for the opportunity as well, Chair. We'd just like to thank everybody that has managed to join us on the online platform. We just have a comment here from Juliet Carter. She comes from Autism SA. She says that autistic children require appropriate support and a system that cares about each child's unique talents and abilities. In addition, she adds that, thank you for raising the important issue of Mohato School. There are autistic children who can cope with CAPS curriculum and are very capable. Thank you very much, Chair.
Did you get it? Can you get closer here because you're... Yeah.
I hope I'm audible now, Chair. Is it a little bit better?
Yeah, can you repeat?
Thank you, Chair. The comment comes from Juliet Carter. Juliet is from Autism SA. She indicates that autistic children require appropriate support and a system that cares about each child's unique talents and abilities. She then adds that, thank you for raising this important issue, Mohato School. There are autistic children who can cope with CAPS curriculum and are very capable.
Okay.
Was that audible, Chair?
Over to you, Prof.
You know what really excited me about those questions is that there were so many about special educational needs. And to see that coming as a strong issue for discussion and further learning in the Lekgotla is wonderful. So my colleague and I have collaborated on the questions. We're both going to look at some, he's going to look at others, and I think that will save time. So I want to we've agreed that I must comment a little bit on the first question, which came from the special needs educator in Soweto. My colleague will add, but this is what I'm going to say. The curriculum is a framework that must result in learners learning. And the job of the teacher is to understand the intentions of the curriculum and structure her approach to the curriculum in line with what she knows learners are learning. That is a principle that goes across the whole curriculum. Obviously, to achieve the social and technical intentions of the curriculum, we need to cover as much of it as possible. Now, how that applies to special ed is that the professional judgment of the teacher in terms of understanding the diversity of learner needs in relation to the curriculum must be exercised, but not in isolation. Teachers live and work in the space of their classroom, but the professional judgments they make need to be tested and examined and debated with their colleagues. That is especially important in special education because the challenges of ensuring that we achieve all of the objectives of the curriculum that are appropriate to the learning needs of those learners is a deeply evidence-based professional practice with our colleagues. You're happy with that? So the technology part of the question, Mr. Dlamini is going to take. The second one that I really liked from Nadine, if I could hear you, there's sound problems, but I've also got hearing aids which don't do well with an echo. So Nadine, I really, if I heard you correctly, want to support you in saying that our approach to teacher development at school level needs to be differentiated and developmental. And that the task of districts, the district curriculum development specialists at SEA level, DCS level, CS level, is to gather the data from their visits, from results, from the DDD, from SAMs, to identify the support that's needed, and then to respond in a differentiated basis to the needs of teachers. There are provinces that are doing this, or beginning to do it, and practicing this very well. But we need to further deepen it, because to be relevant to teacher needs, we need to understand our teachers. Just a quick point, both Mr. Dlamini and I yesterday participated in the AU-EU launch that happened next door. And the head of teacher development in UNESCO was just fabulous. And his starting point was, we need proper information about the needs of our teachers so that that information can be integrated with policy and integrated with our interventions in order to support the professional development of teachers. And I had a conversation yesterday with Martin Gustafsson and Stephen Taylor. There's so much information we have in the system that we're not using. Do districts say, who are the brand new teachers in my district this year? Who do I need to support more? Who are the teachers who are teaching subjects that they've never taught before? We've got that data. We must use it and integrate it into our plans. So Nadine, if I heard you correctly, I hope that that's an answer. So the last questions are for my colleague.
Thank you so much, Prof. Also, thank you, ma'am, so much for raising the about autism. That is very, very important because, yes, there are, but currently it's giving hope because there are a lot of workshops that are being done for learners with autism. Because mostly they are really sidelined, and I know that for sure. But also, what is giving hope is that I've been in contact with Microsoft in USA, where we have a partnership for working. It's good partnership where they're creating tools to assist learners with disabilities. For my class, it's working. That's why we are seeing if it will be good for learners with autistic. But the gadgets for them, definitely, that I hope soon that will be available. And thank you very much for that. And the support for educators in special need, what's the mostly important one is curriculum differentiation. Trainings are there for curriculum differentiation, but it's really needed because that's where, as Prof elaborated, that also as an educator, we must also take initiative and be part of those. In our province, as a special schools educators, we came together with full service and also the mainstream schools so that we have one workshops on issues on disabilities, SNA, and because when they refer the learner to the special school, it's taken a lot of time. Whereas if we have these meetings where we are seeing what documents are needed for us and what assistance they can also offer rather than transferring the learner to a special school. Because in mainstream, I've been in mainstream, I graduated in mainstream, there was nothing much that is different. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause for our presenters. And I think the take home for the commissions is to look at issues of adaptation to changing environment for educators. And two, look at those constants that Prof has raised: innovation, adaptation, professional agency, developing evidence-based professional judgment. Thirdly, is the resourcing of the innovations and the key tools that Mr. Dlamini has lifted. Four is the developing of an educator with the traits that he has just lifted for innovative educators. I think we need to look at that. And lastly, this curriculum differentiation, especially for the special needs schools. I think that's what is emerging sharply even in the debate and in the presentations. Thank you very much once again, panelists. You can leave. A big round of applause for our panelists. Over to you, DG.
Thank you very much, HOD Eastern Cape, Prof. Mary McCarthy, Babu Dlamini, very passionate teacher, a very good example for all of us. I fully agree with him. In fact, I had a difficulty a week ago on radio interview when I was trying to convince somebody who was interviewing us that every learner is capable to achieve in life, and it is up to us to make them to succeed. And when teachers are saying, how can you do this in an environment such as this, HOD Gauteng, it means we have to go out and support them. Teachers are calling out for support so that they become passionate and see teaching as fun, like Mr. Dlamini. Give Professor Mary McCarthy and Mr. Dlamini a big hand of applause. Yeah. Teaching must be fun. People must not have difficulties waking up to go to work because they imagine, the difficulties that they are going to go through at school. They must look forward to the classroom. They must feel that they can't wait to be there. Thank you, Mr. Dlamini. Your passion is wrapping on us. I feel like going back to the classroom, You have motivated me. So we're proceeding with the program, and the other thing, colleagues, is that Mr. Dlamini is right. There is support and training happening. The impression should not be carried that learners with special needs are not supported at all, but it is not adequate. It is not happening as often as it should. I know of some that I've come across, even, support to learners, let alone educators. For instance, last year, provinces were collaborating on South African Sign Language, I think it's the Northwest. I can't remember whether they were working with the Northern Cape, in training in the Northwest, or they were working with Gauteng and Mpumalanga. Those collaborations must continue. I strongly believe that the best practitioners are in the classroom. And if we can identify those with best practice, who are excellent teachers, that are able to even support others in other parts of our country, we must create those opportunities, HODs, and fund those collaborations. Find money for them. NGOs, let us support these initiatives of supporting learners with special education needs. DBE, we have to go out, Dr. Similani and Mr. Ngo, to also intensify our support to learners with special education needs. All of us are going to monitor that support is increased for learners with special education needs. Thank you very much to all who spoke and those who presented as well. We now move into the second session of today. This session is going to be steered by the HOD of Gauteng Department of Education, Mtate Edward Musuwe. Let's give him a big hand of applause. I must just indicate that I should have done this in the beginning. The Minister, Deputy Minister, and MECs have been called by the ruling party. There was a meeting yesterday. The Minister opted to defy the order to go to that meeting. Don't tell her that I told you this. She defied how she's going to deal with consequences. I said to her, she's experienced enough. She's been in this world for quite some time, but she said to me, I succeeded to defy yesterday because I couldn't get a Lekgotla starting without me, and I had to receive the president and start the Lekgotla. I told the president that I will follow later. So the deputy minister had to also go there in the afternoon. So there is a meeting continuing from yesterday to today up to Monday of the ruling party. If you don't see them here, it's because they are there. It's not that they've stayed away from this Lekgotla. I thought that I must just explain this because I was requested to do so, Tate Musue. Let's give Tate Musue a big hand of applause again. Online, okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much, DG. Good morning, colleagues. Goeiemorgen, dumelang, molweni. I was sitting with an HOD who was telling me about the PWV, so I thought I would say molweni to you, HOD. Colleagues, we are in a session, in a segment that talks to the equipping teachers with skills for effective classroom practice in the 21st century. There are two presenters for this session. May I request, like we have done and we've always been doing, that we note our questions during the presentations, that we make our comments, and at the end we will be given an opportunity to ask those questions. The first presenter that we will have, or maybe before I even call to the presenter, let me also say there'll be a slight amendment on the program in terms of a respondent in the segment 1140 to 1150. If you could take note that in the program, the respondent under teacher skills and entrepreneurship will be done by Mr. Basil Manuel. I'm just prepping you, Basil, just in case you may not have been told that you will come in that segment. At this point in time, I'm introducing to us Dr. Andreas Schleicher, the head for education and skills at the OECD. He initiated and oversees currently the program for international student assessment, PISA, and other international instruments that have been created, that have created a global platform for policymakers, researchers, educators across nations and cultures to innovate and transform educational policies and practices. Andreas has worked over 20 years with ministers and education leaders around the world to improve quality and equity in education. Just to give a sense of these leaders, it's reported that the former US Secretary of Education, Ann Duncan, said that Schleicher understands the global issues and challenges as well, or better than anyone that Ann Duncan had met, and he tells the truth. So it was listed it was covered in the Atlantic of July 2011. Equally, I'm told that the former UK Secretary of State, Michael Gove, had called Andreas the most important man in English education, even though he's German and lives in France. He studied physics in Germany, received a degree in mathematics and statistics in Australia, a recipient of numerous honors and awards, among them the Theodor Heuss Prize, awarded in the name of the first president of the Federal Republic of Germany for exemplary democratic engagement. He holds an honorary professorship at the University of Heidelberg. I didn't know that we also have Heidelberg in Gauteng, so you can see we are an international country. We welcome Andreas. Andreas, please speak to us. Andreas will be connecting on us online. Thank you very much. Let's welcome you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, and thank you for inviting me to Lekgotla. It's such a pleasure, and I also want to really congratulate you to the South African competency framework. You know, getting teachers to understand the intentions of that framework and enabling it in every classroom is going to make such a difference to young South Africans, getting them ready for their future. Never forget that, your schools today is going to be your economy, your society, your democracy tomorrow. Globalization and technology have connected people, connected cities, connected countries and continents in a way that have vastly increased our individual and also our collective potential. But the same forces have also made our world more volatile, more complex, more uncertain, more ambiguous. The world has seen a growing disconnect between the infinite growth imperative and the finite resources of our planet, between the financial economy and the real economy, between the wealthy and the poor, between the idea of our gross domestic product and the well-being of people, between, what is technologically possible and the social needs of people. And between, also our governance and the perceived voicelessness of people. Of course, I don't want to hold education responsible for all of that. But, let's never underestimate the power of the knowledge, the skills, the attitudes, the values of people in the social, in the economic development, and also in shaping our cultural context. Culture is not just what we inherit. Culture is what we build through our education today. While technology and globalization have always, disruptive implications for our economic structure, our social structures, those implications are never predetermined. It's always the nature of our collective responses to those disruptions that will shape their impact. And that is about the interplay between the technological frontier and the cultural, the social, the institutional agents that we mobilize in response. And in this world, education is no longer just about teaching students something, delivering the content of the curriculum. No, it's about helping them develop a reliable compass and the tools to navigate with confidence through this, volatile, complex, uncertain world. And that's why your new curriculum framework is so central to success. Success in education today is about identity, it's about agency, it's about purpose. It's about building curiosity, opening minds. It's about compassion, opening hearts, and it's about courage. Being able to mobilize our cognitive, social, emotional resources to take action. And that's also going to be our best weapons against the biggest threats of our times, ignorance, the closed mind, hate, the closed heart, and fear, that enemy of agency. The kind of things that are easy to teach and test, they're also easy to digitize, to automate these days. We know how to educate second-class robots, people who are very good at repeating what we told them. Well, in this age of, acceleration and artificial intelligence, we all need to think much harder about what makes us human. And the future is about pairing the artificial intelligence of computers with the cognitive, the social, the emotional skills and values of human beings. That is what your curriculum framework has at its heart, but it's about enabling that in every classroom. Think of something, as basic as literacy. In the 20th century, literacy was about extracting and processing pre-coded information. Very straightforward. In the 21st century, it's about constructing and validating knowledge. A very different skill set. The literacy of the 21st century is so different from the 20th century. In the 20th century, literacy was about, reproducing the established wisdom of our times. In the 21st century, it's about questioning the established wisdom of our times. In the past, as a teacher, you could tell students to look up information in an encyclopedia, and then, they could trust that information they find in that encyclopedia to be accurate, to be true. Well, nowadays, you look up things on Google and you will get millions of answers. And nobody is going to tell you what is right and what is wrong, what is true, what is not true. The more knowledge technology allows us to search and access, the more important becomes really deep understanding. Our capacity to navigate ambiguity, to triangulate different viewpoints, and to make sense of what we read. Contrast that with the finding from the PISA 2018 assessment of reading literacy, where on average across countries, less than half of 15-year-olds were able to distinguish fact from opinion. Every second of our 15-year-olds could not distinguish fact from opinion in a world where this is vital for survival. The fact that, advancements in literacy skills have fallen so sharply behind the evolution and the nature of information around us now has very profound consequences in a world where virality is now often privileged over the quality and the distribution of information. We live in this post-truth climate now where assertions that feel right but have no basis in fact often become accepted as if they were facts. We have algorithms that sort us into groups of like-minded individuals that create social media echo chambers that amplify our own views and leave us insulated from opposing arguments that could have, changed our beliefs. And those virtual bubbles, they homogenize opinions and they polarize our societies. And they can have a significant and often adverse impact on democratic process. And those algorithms are not a design flaw. They are exactly how social media are intended to work. There is scarcity of attention, but an abundance of information. We are living in this digital bazaar where anything that is not built for the network age is cracking apart under its pressures. The conventional approach in your classroom has been often to break big problems down into smaller and smaller bits and pieces, and then to teach students how to solve those bits and pieces. But that's no longer good enough. Modern societies often create value by synthesizing different fields of knowledge, by making connections between subjects, between ideas that previously seemed unrelated. It's about connecting the dots where the next innovation is going to come from. It's teaching across the boundaries of subject matter disciplines. In the past, schools were often technological islands, with technology often limited to supporting and conserving existing practices. And your students are always outpacing your classrooms, your schools in adoption of technology. Well, nowadays schools need to use the potential of technology to liberate learning from past conventions and to connect learners in new ways, in powerful ways, with new sources of information, with innovative applications, with one another. Technology can make learning more granular, more adaptive, more interactive, engage with different learner needs, including special needs. It can give you as a teacher powerful ways to understand how different students learn differently and embrace it with differentiated pedagogical practice. The past was always divided, as teachers and content divided by school subjects and students, often separated by our expectations about their future career. Schools are very good at keeping students inside and the rest of the world outside. And often we see a lack of engagement with families and a reluctance to partner with other schools. Well, the future needs to be different. It needs to be much more integrated, with much more emphasis on the interrelationships between subjects and also the integration of different students. Of course, deepening subject matter knowledge is important, but it's equally important to help students understand the nature of subjects. Success is no longer just about, to know, mathematical formulas and equations, but it's about being able to think like a mathematician. It's easy to teach students to calculate an exponential function, but we need to become better to help them understand the idea, the concept of an exponential function, which is not human. Human intuition is always linear. Time, space, these are linear concepts. We're very comfortable with them. And suddenly we see an exponential, like a pandemic expanding, or climate change. And we don't know how to deal with this, but the world of mathematics can open that door to understand and engage with those phenomena. Science is not about, just what we know in biology and chemistry and physics. No, it's about thinking like a scientist. Can you design an experiment? Can you distinguish questions that are scientifically investigable from those that are not? History is not about names and places. It's about understanding how the narrative of a society has emerged, how it developed, how it advanced, and sometimes how it unravels when the context changes. Thinking like an historian. That's really what, your new curriculum framework is about. That's the kind of challenge in which our societies are today. The surface content is easy to memorize, but also quickly forgotten. Often our school systems are a mile wide, but just an inch deep. We teach so much at relatively superficial depth. Deepening that is important. In our schools, students typically learn individually. And at the end of the year, we test their individual achievement. But, the more interdependent the world becomes, the more we need great collaborators, great orchestrators. We can see during the pandemic how the well-being of entire countries depends on our capacity to take collective action. So schools need to help students learn to be autonomous in their thinking and to develop an identity that is aware of the pluralism of modern living. And that's really important at work, at home, in our communities. People need to have a broad understanding of how other people live in different cultures, in different traditions, and how other people think, whether, as scientists or as artists. And the foundations for that don't all come natural. We are all born with bonding social capital, a sense of belonging to our family or people who have shared experiences, shared purposes. But it always requires deliberate and continuous efforts to create the kind of bridging social capital through which we can share experiences with people who are different from us, share ideas, share innovation with others, and also increase our radio of trust to other people, to strangers. These considerations, have led our work at the OECD and the Thales survey, in which South Africa participates, but also PISA, the global standard for measuring the quality of educational outcomes, to include something that we call global competency. And to do well on that, part of the assessment, students had to demonstrate that they can combine knowledge about the world with critical reasoning, and that they were able to adapt their own behavior and their own communication style to interact with people from different traditions, from different cultures. It was no surprise to us that, that countries that do generally well in education also tended to show higher levels of global competence. Now, students in Singapore or Canada who do well on PISA, the subject matter knowledge, they also did well on global competency. But what was more interesting is that, a country like Colombia in Central America, where students often struggle with reading, mathematics, and science, Colombia did far better on global competency than predicted by its reading, mathematics, and science course. And why is that? Because Colombia used education to build peace in a very fragmented countries. It had taught students to look actively to other people, other cultures, other traditions in their country. And you can see that reflected in an international assessment. That's why, a curriculum can be such a powerful tool, not only to change the knowledge, what students know, but also their attitudes, their behavior, their ways of thinking. Countries also vary in the extent to which their students are resilient and open to the future. Think of Vietnam. Countries where students excel on PISA. Vietnam has built one of the strongest education systems in the world very recently. But it had the smallest share of students who feel confident to deal with unusual situations. Smallest share of students who felt that they could change their behavior to meet the needs of new situations or adapt to different situations. And you contrast that with students in Mexico, again, who did not do so well on mathematics, on science. But the Mexican students were not afraid to navigate ambiguity or manage uncertainty. What I'm telling you here is that, some capabilities and attitudes that are very, very important in our times, they do not come as an automatic byproduct of academic success. They need to be nurtured. They need to be taught in the same way as we focus on mathematics and science. They happen to what happens in classrooms. They relate to what happens in classrooms, what schools. They relate to not, just what you say as the teacher, but to who you are, how you behave. And these things show how education can make a real difference. Now, preparing students for an interconnected world starts with a curriculum that is really open to the world. The findings from our research show large differences between countries in the extent to which global issues, such as public health or climate change or poverty, migration, conflicts, but also issues around international understanding are covered in the curriculum. And importantly, the coverage of global issues in lessons was always positively related with students' dispositions and with students' engagement with those issues. For example, in countries where, causes of poverty were discussed more in the classroom, students were more aware about issues like migration and the movement of people. And always, it's not just what teachers say, it's how they interact. The results showed a consistent negative relationship between students' perception of discrimination in their school and students' own perspective taking. Respect for people from other cultures and attitudes towards immigration and awareness. For example, students who perceived discrimination by their teachers towards, particular groups in their class, they often exhibited quite similar attitudes. And that shows, how powerful your behavior, your own attitudes, your own perspectives as a teacher are in shaping what your students, think and what they do. All of that shows, that what public policy can do, that it can make a real difference to prepare the next generation for our complex, for our interconnected world. And the schools and education systems that were most successful in fostering global knowledge, global skills, open attitudes among their students were always those that offer a curriculum that values openness to other people, provide a positive and inclusive learning environment, offer opportunities to relate to people from other cultures, and who have teachers who are truly prepared for teaching things like global competencies. Now, getting that right is absolutely important. The global competence of our young people today could shape our future as much as the reading, mathematics, and science skills. And it's always going to be societies that are able to, that value, that bridging social capital and pluralism, that can draw on the best talent from anywhere in the world and nurture it, and nurture also creativity and innovation.
Andreas,
and I know, that's all
to...
what Lekgotla is about. And therefore, I want to thank you once again for inviting me this morning.
Andreas, thank you. I was just going to stop you there, but ask you to remain online and listen, because there are many other questions and comments that colleagues would like to make. As we proceed with this section of our work, we are going to invite to the podium our CEO of the South African Council of Educators, Ms. Ella Mokhalane, who will come to talk to us about teacher professionalization in the context of a changing world. Our CEO, as you know, she's been with the SAIS for a long time. She served as a senior manager before. She worked in the Mpumalanga Department of Education, HOD Lucy. She's an alumni of the University of Witwatersrand, but she continues to study. She's currently, while she has a master's degree in management, specializing in public policy, she's decided to go and study again for a master's in education. I would like us to put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome on the podium Ms. Ella Mokhalane.
Thank you very much. Is it on? Oh, okay. To the Minister and Deputy Minister in their absentia, the DG, our Portfolio Committee on Basic Education Chairperson, our SAIS Council Chairperson and the councillors that are here, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings and professional revolutionary greetings from the home of the teaching profession. Yeah, I thought I would hear amen. From SAIS, or the teaching profession, we are presenting the whole process of professionalizing the teaching profession within the context of the changing world. And in doing that, one of the things that we need to do is to really present the teacher professionalization as a collaborative and transformative process. And therefore, you would understand that it cannot be one-sided. And that is why it's a collaborative and coordinated process that involves everybody across the entire teacher education and development continuum. Also, as we talk about teacher professionalization, it has got implications for various organizations, institutions, for the entire teaching profession, but also for teachers. Remember, we are regulating the profession across both higher education and also basic education, and also just brief background in terms of where we are currently. Now, let me start with the with contextualizing the whole issue of professionalization into the teaching profession. And in doing that, I think the policy environment and also the legislation becomes very important. Apologies for the error in terms of NDP, it's Vision 2030. But just to indicate, in terms of what Dr. Marupe said yesterday, policies and legislation are very key in terms of providing strategic direction to the profession, to the sector, in terms of what do we mean when we say we professionalize the teaching profession. And therefore, I've highlighted those key policies that are important for us, from issues of initial teacher education, issues of teacher continuing professional development, but also the two missing things that we always forget when we talk about this topic. It's about the extent at which we are dealing with issues of induction and mentoring of our newly qualified educators, as well as what does it mean to accept newly qualified teachers into the teaching profession. But also, we are operating within the globe, and therefore, the international and regional and also continental frameworks become very important. We spoke yesterday about the importance of the SDG 4. There are other instruments pertaining to standards in the continent, in EI, in UNESCO, African Union, as well as your SADC. Those are very important also as we professionalize the teaching profession, especially because we've got teacher mobility within the country, and therefore we can't ignore those issues. But there's also the issue that was also discussed yesterday around the 2022 Transforming Education Summit. Out of that particular summit, I think there are two key tracks that are very important for us as we do this work. One being the issue of digital learning, which I'm not going to focus on, but is very important for this particular conference or Lekgotla that we are having. One of the key thematic track that is important for us is about teachers, it's about teaching, and what is missing in that particular DG, the teaching profession. We can't talk about teachers and teaching outside the teaching profession. And I see we've got teachers and teaching for industrial revolution, good, but how do we also include the issue of the teaching profession? And therefore, let me reiterate the fact that teachers are at the epicenter of all the work that we are doing in this conference. Other speakers have already indicated that, but as a country, we cannot sacrifice better and quality and also quantity teachers. We're talking quality issues, but we continue to not avail enough resources for quantity. Hence, we're talking issues around shortage, we're talking issues around not being about crowded classrooms and all that. If we are taking teachers serious in professionalization, therefore we need to understand that their working conditions matter. There is no way that you can have effective process of implementing this new framework that we are talking about on digital learning, on competencies of the future, on changing competencies of the changing world, if we are not going to deal with conditions of the working of teachers and also their well-being in terms of where they are currently. Again, let me not go into the academic debate, but you know, when you've got academics in the room, they're going to ask you philosophically, what does it mean for you to professionalize? And therefore, already many speakers, including Mary when we were listening to her, talked about the importance of professional identity. Of educators, it's about professionalization leading to issues of professionalism, but it's not automatic. You'd professionalize, it's not automatic that you're going to have to, professionalization will come automatically, and therefore we need to work very hard on that. The whole issue of the continuum that I've already talked about, the value chain between when I say I want to become a teacher until I retire, becomes very important when you talk about teacher professionalism, is that connection between teacher education and also induction and how you accept teachers into the classroom until they retire. And therefore, we need these three concepts when we talk teacher professionalization. It's about individuals, the internal quality of the system, their professionalism, but also the collective. It can't be individuals only. That is why they belong to a profession, they belong to a professional council, because as a collective, they believe in certain that I've already indicated. Because we are professionalizing a sector, we are also professionalizing the profession, the teaching profession in the country, including the issue of particular discipline within the country that we've spoken about. And therefore, this continuum becomes very important in terms of what I've already indicated, that they will be able to deal with the changing world that we are talking about. Obviously, continuing professional development, we cannot do away with it. We need to be lifelong learners in order to make sure that we keep abreast with that. And therefore, I need to emphasize the collaboration. I need to emphasize the process that the ETDP SETA is coordinating. We are just from Teacher Development Summit in the last year or so, and therefore that coordination that is being led by the ETDP SETA becomes important in making sure that professionalization becomes important. Yesterday, the President emphasized the issue of outcome number one of the country, which is us making sure that we've got capable, ethical, and also developmental state. And I want to say, from where I'm sitting as a professional body, as a profession, we have a responsibility to strengthen the capacity and also internal quality, which is professionalism within the teaching profession. But also, as we do that, while the President and also ministers are busy with strengthening capacity through professionalization of the public service, we are doing it through the teaching profession in terms of making sure that we've got capable, ethical, and also inclusive and digitally fit, future fit, change-proof, future-focused educators that will be able to assist us with what we are dealing with. Also, the issue of us building trust is very important. We've spoken about the values yesterday, and I want to re-emphasize, values of the teaching profession are very important. And therefore, they define what does it mean for Ella to be a teacher in South Africa. They define what it means for me to be talking about going to that classroom and taking responsibility to make sure that the children that are in that classroom are being taught through the curriculum these skills and also these competencies that we are talking about in this conference. And therefore, linked to the values as we professionalize will be the professional standards, it will be the ethical standards, because as the teaching profession, as educators, we sign a social contract, which Linda Darling-Hammond is saying it's invisible, it's intangible social contract between ourselves and also the public and learners to say, this is what we'll do. We will safeguard the interests of the profession through this particular standards. And therefore, as we continue to talk about drafting the framework, we talk about digital learning within the system. We can't do away with the ethics of the profession. We can't do away with the professional standards of the profession. As you can see, we have the professional teaching standards that are saying the teaching profession in our hands. We're owning it. It's ours. We've got agency in terms of dealing with issues of the profession. We've got that professional judgment that we are able to exercise the autonomy within our own classroom in terms of what we are doing. And therefore, the first 5 standards are saying we are educators who build communities. And communities is not only referring to communities in a sense of communities in societies. It's about communities, professional learning communities, it's about research communities, it's about communities of practice, and so on and so on. It's about also saying we will deal with social justice. We will know the learners that we are teaching so that we can practice social justice, practice social cohesion. It's also about the other 4 fingers that are saying educators enable learning. And therefore, as we work towards these competencies of the changing world, we need to remember at all times that without educators, as we've already indicated, there's no way that we can deal with it. I need to emphasize on this one. I think there's a confusion within the sector, both higher education and basic education, the 2 sectors. We have, as a country, or as the teaching profession, nested model of standards. Now, at the outer level, where you have the white area or the orange area, you can talk about the broad metrics, the NDP, the other frameworks that are coming from internationally, regionally, and etc. But within the country, in terms of the teaching profession, because we are a professional body that is leading the profession and voice of the teaching profession, therefore, we've got professional standards that serve as the North Star for the country. Whatever that you do inside the other, whether you are an employer, you are Department of Higher Education Training, CHE, etc., you can see there are a myriad of standards for qualifications, professional development framework for digital learning, and all that and all that. All these standards that you see here needs to speak to the standard of the teaching profession. Otherwise, there's no point in having the profession. Similarly, when we develop the framework that we are working towards, we should be able to say, where does that framework fit in terms of the nested model of standards that we are having? But definitely we can't ignore the standards of the teaching profession, because we are the ones who are responsible for implementing, for making sure that everything goes accordingly. We have a teacher professionalization path, which is a value chain that is linked to the definition of the professionalization that I've spoken about. The first green areas are speaking to what should happen in initial teacher education. What are the responsibilities of higher education and training, of the professional body, and also other relevant partners who are providing initial teacher education across both public and private. It's not about your private, your public institutions only. The yellow ones are saying we can't be training teachers and hope that universities prepare them, hope that universities will give us a fully furnished kind of a person who comes into our classrooms. And therefore, without any doubt, induction and mentoring becomes very important. And the yellow area is speaking to that particular area in terms of 4, 5, 6. And the last ones are obviously about continuing professional development. And therefore, from the ETDP SITA program that we are working on in terms of the entire teacher education continuum, there's a big issue in terms of, as a collective, finalizing the process of defining the kind of a teacher that we want in the teaching profession. And therefore, this process, in fact, is assisting us because the teams are already there to work on that, and we should be able to finalize that particular process. But also, we need to be serious about the provisioning of programs for preparing teachers. It can't be business as usual. It can't be that this university is offering this, that one is offering something else, and then when you get the products, there are 2 different or 100 different products. And therefore, the issue of making sure that the programs that are being offered by higher education institutions for preparation of teachers are underpinned or they infuse standards of the profession is very important. But linked to that, we know that we've got qualification standards, we've got other standards that are there. But currently, if you look at the minimum requirements for teacher education qualification in terms of policy, it has got basic competencies for newly qualified educators. And I think this is an opportunity because we are reviewing Mr. Tech to be looking at competencies of the changing world and begin to infuse them in that particular policy as we finalize it, so that we're talking in the same voice and all that. But let me also announce, DG, in this platform, that finally, SACE and CHE, Council on Higher Education, will be signing Memorandum of Agreement and Understanding before the end of financial year with collaborative process of accrediting teacher education qualifications and programs. Something that we all said we've been waiting for. And you know what that means? It means if there are standards, there are certain things within the profession that we feel higher education institution programs and qualifications should be doing, and the graduates are not, or the universities are not following that, we have the right not to register. Train them, but we won't register them. Simple as that. And therefore, we need to look into this process. I know within the sector, it has been an issue to say when are we starting that particular process. And I know Dr. Green will be here today, can reinforce what I'm already saying. Initial teacher education, that space needs to be professionalized. It can't be business as usual. It can't be that when we've got teaching practice, we've got holiday in classrooms. We've got teachers some of the teachers not taking responsibility for purposeful mentorship. However, there's a rider to say, to what an extent are employers also supporting those educators in terms of that purposeful mentorship, so that those students that come into classrooms can be prepared accordingly. There's also issues around when we deal with continuing professional development. There's a disconnect between what learners know from digital literacy, from digital learning, from computers, from whatever, technology, etc., and the kind of cohort of educators that are there in terms of the competencies that are there. Remember, from initial teacher education, if you've noticed, the cohort that is coming into the profession are the millennials, the ones that are being produced currently. And when you go into the profession, we argue we've got the aging profession. And therefore, how do we bring the two together in such a way that you don't continue to have that particular disconnect that is going? So the last area, yes, I don't know, 2 slides, quickly. The last area is about continuing professional development. Just to re-emphasize the difference between the CPTD system and provisioning system. SACE is not responsible for provisioning of continuing professional development, but it quality assures or quality manages that provisioning in terms of the quality of those that will be providing, and also whether the programs that are being offered are fit for purpose. So if we are having the framework, we're having digital learning and all that, we need to make sure that those providers that are applying for endorsement, for approval, are really fit for purpose. And the quality of programs are the qualities that they're offering are relevant, and also what they will be delivering to teachers is up to scratch. But I think one of the things that we are realizing in terms of both systems is that we're facing a challenge, Harun. When we conceptualized the CPTD system, we assumed that it will be on the basis of self-determination. It will be on the basis of intrinsic motivation. It will be on the basis of autonomous regulation, that educators will automatically. However, on the other side of provisioning, there are issues that we need to deliberate on within the Commission. Issues of external regulation, issues of the introjects that educators are expecting, the contingencies that goes with external regulation that educators are expecting in as far as continuing professional development. My last slide, the last one, we need to consider honestly and seriously the professionalization of the ECD sector. Because it can't be that we are continuing with business as usual, we are very slow, and many things are happening. That process has commenced, but it's not moving with a fast pace that is supposed to. We are talking together with the Department of Basic Education. I know they gave us data on PYEI's education assistance in terms of the possibility of introducing paraprofessionals in the teaching profession. But we need to accept and agree that we need to rebrand, repurpose, and also the CPTD system, including the provisioning system of continuing professional development, the extent at which professional development is responsive to Education 4.0. But research has shown that most of our initiatives are forgetting school leaders. And therefore, no school leadership and management should be left behind as we are working on these processes. And lastly, teacher working conditions as well as their safety, security, and well-being is fundamental in as far as we are going to take this entire process serious. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ella, for that. And to Andreas, can we another round of applause, colleagues, for this presentation. I want to see how many people have an appetite to comment and ask questions. I will start. I will check any takers. I note a hand at the back there. That will be number 1. Yes. And I'm moving to number 2 over here. And I'm moving to number 3 over there. Is that the Khomu? Yeah. And I'm moving to number 4 over there. I got you. And number 5. And we are done. Online. Oh. Ow. Is that the afterthoughts? Number 5, then number 6.
I'm number 5.
Number 7. And number 8. You remember your numbers? Let's start. Number 1. Be concise.
Galeboa HOD. Kalibitso ke nna Tshepo wa Lekgotla from NASGB. My question will just be, it's a question, only one, but maybe let me start by just appreciating the content of the 2 reports or presentations. But to say, you know, we are dealing with, as NASCOP, we are dealing with various SGBs, trying to give them capacity building, assisting parents, but there is always one concern. We know, like, just like your presentation have said, that you are also meant to regulate how teachers behave and whatsoever. We now, in our hands, have a report of a few teachers that come to school wearing clothes as if they are Nyaupe addicts, that are standing in front of our learners, and the department is not doing much to deal with it. How do we then, so that we can advise parents properly? Who do we contact, or how do we get in touch with you so that we know to say, le ka bua le be mang or le ntate mang from SACE, so that we can report some of these things? Because we can't allow teachers that even smoke dagga inside schoolyards, yet the department doesn't want to deal with such. But it's fine, we'll give even our HOD, as she's presenting, some of this information later on. But it was just a direct question to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to number 2. Let's be on point.
Good morning. My name is Ali Mukhalaka. I'm the National Best Teacher Award winner. I'm also the ICT.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I'm also the spokesperson for the ICT strategic plan in Limpopo. There wasn't gonna be a chance that I wasn't gonna ask something or say something because you are talking about me here, you're talking about a teacher. Now, I was listening from yesterday, and it's interesting, and we were talking about technology, technical skills. I heard the DG saying that the political heads are not here. I think Professor Metcalf and the DG, please can you carry this message to the political head? Make sure that I get the answer, because then I have to answer the teachers that sent me here. My first point, I don't know if it's a comment or, do we have, everything that we're talking about here will be propelled by the use of technology and introducing technical skills in high schools. Now, do we have the political will? When we talk of political will, I'm not talking about this gathering here. I'm talking about, can we take, for an example, 500 billion rands and say we're gonna buy gadgets for schools, we're gonna retrain teachers, because we have teachers that are in villages like Makuba, 50 kilometers from any town. Mkwakweni, Nelspruit, just outside Matsuru. Do we have the political will? Do we have the time frames? Can we say, we know that we started with 550 schools, yes, thank you very much. The president has alluded to that. But do we have time frames? Can we say now we are implementing? We're starting on this day and then we're gonna finish on this day and we have this much money. Did we do a research or we're just talking? Like I spoke about the time frame, and then when do we start? In other words, let's put this to practicality. What do I tell the teachers when I go back? Do I tell them the same stuff that they've been talking about years ago? And I see, Chair, you're looking at me. I'm finishing right now.
Thank you.
Let's have the budget. Let's have the political will. Let's have time frames. Let it be known to everyone. We mustn't keep guessing. Then let's implement and start with the use of technology and implementing technical skills subjects in school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to number 3. Mr. Dikhomo, I think it's you there. Then we will move to number 4, that side.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, colleagues. My question is directed to Dr. Slater from OECD. He actually indicated the importance of the future education, which is going to be more interactive, collaborative, and the like. And then he juxtaposed two countries that do well on PISA national, international assessments. And then says in Vietnam, examples were Vietnam and Singapore, that they do not produce students that can collaborate, a small share of students that can work collaboratively, that can face ambiguity and the like. And then juxtapose it with two countries, Colombia and Mexico, countries that don't do well on PISA and teams, but then produce learners that are able to face ambiguity, that can be good social, whatever, citizens, as it were. My question is this a researched fact? Number 2, if so, what does it mean for curriculum? What does it mean for teaching? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andres, I hope you're listening. You're still online. Let's go to number 3 over that side. I think that other hand is just an afterthought. Let me see after my number 8. That other hand is an afterthought. I would come. I wouldn't want to close you out, but let's do number 3. Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Shana Mirza. I'm from the South African National Biodiversity Institute. So my question, and it's building on some of the work that was mentioned yesterday, around aspects linked to climate change, environment, moving towards the low carbon economy, etc. And also looking at the commitments we've made around point 18 in the Transforming Education Summit. So I think it is, what I'm putting onto the table is something for us to keep also as we move into commissions. And my question is for us to think about how these things are being provisioned for across the system. So if we are moving into commissions later on and we're looking at it in terms of curriculum and its relevance in terms of 21st century skills or in terms of policies, teacher professional development, LTSM, we need to be able to keep that at the back of our minds into how we're provisioning for it in the system compared to where we have been, where we have environment in the curriculum, but it has never really been provisioned for in the system previously. So that's the first point. And the second point that I just want to highlight is, for example, the Mr. Tech document, and how is it filtering into teacher professional standards? How is it actually going to influence teacher competencies? How is it actually going to look at knowledge practice standards? I think I'm saying we need to be able to keep that in focus if we're looking for a future fit process.
Thank you very much. How these gets are worked across the system. Number 5. Yes.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
It's still morning.
Yes, it's still morning. Thank you, Chair. I'm from Naptosa. My name's Hema Hariram, and I think it's important that this session, especially the one by Sis Ella, was about teachers, about me, and it's important to make a comment and to appreciate the OECD presentation as well. So noting that skills for a changing world is important, and then we need to keep abreast with changes. I want to put on the table that there are stakeholders here who have those skills and are ready to help assist, that in doing so, we do not lose the professionalism and the autonomy of the teacher, that we respect that our teachers know about the skills for a changing world. It is in our section 1 of the CAPS after all. My second one is in terms of the TED process that we had just come through from last year. And I notice in the entire agenda, there's a lot of duplication, and to reaffirm that we must collaborate and take things together rather than working in silos. Thank you very much.
Thanks for those comments. We will go to number 6. Who was number 6?
Chair.
No, Rennie, you are coming. You are trying to hijack my numbering. Let's not hijack. Let's do number 6 here, 7 and 8, and we will see. I can see that this session has cost a whole lot of life. So we're going to have to manage time. Let's go to Mr. Zulu here.
Thank you, HOD. Morning, colleagues. Number 1, I think I have 3. HOD, you'll bear with me. My name is William Zulu. I'm from National Governors Association. My first question is related to SACE, and really we need as an association to get, how do you operate in line with issues that are related to either educator or principals? But another issue is we may as well be aware that they don't reach your office. But we want to know, how do we report as an association to your office if we get stuck at Department of Education, because this is where the stumbling block is, so that you may not know what is happening within these cases that we report. The other issue is similar to that. Currently, we are using EFT in terms of payments. Now, you found out that the chairperson or the treasurer are not the authorizers of the school account. It is only the principals alone or the principal with the admin clerk or you call financial officer. Now, how do you go about it if it reach your office? I know it's one of the cases that may not be in your office as I alluded earlier. Lastly, the MEC of Gauteng, and that Chilwan. This week, I think he was howled on Twitter by wearing an ANC regalia because he was in an official duty. But now, how do you say in schools where you find a teacher wearing a union regalia during contact time? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's go to number 7. I will come to you, Professor, and to Rennie, if you can just keep it. No, yeah, the two over there and there. You'll be 9 and 10. Yeah. 11. If I leave that corner, I might be in trouble. Okay, let's go on.
Good morning. My name is Buti Mashangu from Blind SA. I am in a committee of...
we are struggling a little bit to hear for some of you. Maybe if you just speak into the mic, we have been asking ourselves here whether are we hard of hearing.
Okay, I am in the basic ECD and basic and higher education department in the Blind SA. I wanted to share some of the experience and also ask for wisdom here. I have some formats that are used by blind and partially sighted people within the higher education, which are the following: the large print, the constructed and unconstructed braille, the MP3, which is audio, and the Daisy reader. And I was checking if are there any limitations for our children who are having barriers in reading and writing to have one of the format that is I've quoted here to use for them to answer their question, their homeworks, and even their exams. Let me share my experience for this year. I just completed my honors degree in social work. I've enrolled for masters. And since the beginning of my studies, I've been using the MP3, which means my question comes in an audio, and then question 1, then I answer orally. Since I started the course, I've completed my honors using only that format. And now, as I've just completed, I'll be starting now to go for these things of braille, the things of computer. I'm computer illiterate, I'm braille illiterate, but I've got my honors. So I'm thinking also to say, how best can we assist our children? Yes, I see that they are going to miss something there, Because of if ever maybe they are using this format, but they don't know how to spell. You see here, I've written my notes here. After I write the notes, I can't read what I've written. Somebody has to read for me. There was a situation, because of during the course of my studies, in the beginning, there was no, all these things I didn't know. Remember, when you arrive in a school, you don't know what is there. So I rely on people to read for me, and then during the exam, the person ran away, and then I don't know what to do.
All
then
right.
it takes long until I start to learn about the devices. The devices, the first device that I received, it was the Victor book reader machine. The Victor book reader machine, my study material.
As you summarize?
My study material come on audio, and then I just put in inside the Victor book reader machine. I listen to the question. I use another tape recorder. I was using the tape recorder to answer my question. But currently, I'm using the Blaze EZ and the other smart devices to do all this. So I'm just checking if ever, is there any way, because of, let me share just one experience also. I had an opportunity.
Let's do this.
Let me finish, sir.
No. Let's do this. I think I appreciate, and I'm just trying to manage time. You are raising an important matter.
Just 1 second.
No.
I had an experience going to the provinces in the schools doing a test admin. And when I was doing this test admin, I also observed some of the learners who could not use Braille. Some they can use the unconstructed, some cannot do the unconstructed. You find that those children didn't take the test. It worries me too much to see a child in the school unable to answer their exam, and then they fail, and after that nothing is being done. That is what worries me too much. Ne? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to number 8. Advocate.
Thank you, HOD. I'm Advocate Masugu. The two presenters, I just want to first appreciate their presentation. It was quite informative.
Advocate, can you? Yeah.
The issue I want to raise, says CEO, is the fact of, and I think it does not only pertain to your presentation, it will also have to, an issue that the colleagues from higher training institutions, universities, must pay attention to. My understanding is that teacher supply must be informed by teacher demand. One thing that I've noticed, because I deal with teacher employment as a DDG in KZN for corporate, one thing that I've noticed is that our serious problem currently in our database as a province, we have more than 27,000 educators that are not employed. More than 70% of them are qualified in subjects that we don't need. Those will be people that are trained as part of bridging the gap because they were not part of initial teacher training. They did not do a full course, a 4-year degree, but they did a diploma, for example, in marketing. And because they did not get employment in their areas of training, they end up doing PGCE to bridge the gap. And those people, all of them, about, as I'm saying, 70% of them are trained in their subjects is EMS. And we have an oversupply of those. We don't need them. The system is not able to absorb them. I wanted, therefore, to say, moving forward is an issue because it does affect the issue also of professionalism. To professionalize a person cannot be done over 1 year. It's a long process. You can't have a fully professional person over a 1-year period. I know there will be a lot of training also, which is in service and all that, but to me, this becomes a very crucial issue that we must look at. So the issue of supply must be informed by demand. These people, when they are frustrated because we are not able to demand them. You then see it tests their level of professionalism. They march to us, you see the level of insults they extend. These are supposed to be teaching our learners. They are frustrated, they are not employed, and we do understand that. But we need to have a way of dealing with that issue as part of dealing with the issue of teacher supply, because it is soon becoming a problem for the sector. I would have wanted to raise the other issue from the earlier presenter, Franz, I think, Dr. Competencies.
Okay. Rennie?
Yeah, Chair Rennie Somnath from SATU. Chair, I'll make my point very quickly. The basic thing is, do we have a thinking problem or do teachers have a thinking problem? And I'll tell you why. We are floating stuff, a lot of it, curriculum, assessment.
Do we have, rephrase the question? We try, I just want...
The question is, do we have a thinking problem in this room or do teachers have a thinking problem where they are working? So that's the capturing point. And then I want to say, we as thinkers, we're floating a lot of stuff. Curriculum, assessment, technology, entrepreneurship, competency, pedagogy, curriculum differentiation. And I can go on and on with the list. And based on what we are floating, we are making far-reaching decisions. And what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to reconcile all the stuff that we're floating to teacher thinking and the tools that teachers need or require to do their work. And I'm finding that reconciliation troublesome, I'm finding it hectic, and I'm just wondering, who exactly is in charge here in terms of what we do? Because we're asking teachers to teach for the 21st century. We're not giving them the tools or allowing them the space to do that. We float curriculum. We bring up a scripted lesson. So I think somebody needs to be in charge of this to understand what's being floated and how we can process this so that we give teachers the tools which they can use to make decisions in the classroom to build strong learning experiences for learners. So that's the crux of the point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last one. And I note that there's a commission, as we go on commissions, that talks to teacher preparation, professionalism, and standard setting and well-being. So you might want to think, many of the questions that have come have also linked to this. You may want to think of going into that commission and share some of these ideas. Yes, let's get that comment.
Nyabonga Ntate Musu. Dumela Hussein. Mine will be easy. One, we've been sitting in Lekgotlas discussing issues. I want to agree with the speaker that was saying, let's have a time frame. If we can discuss the issue of ICT and maybe the principal, in political principles, put a budget of 10 or 15 billion rands directed in education for ICT. Number two, if we want to see our country competing with the best, not the best, let's discuss the issue of learner ratio in classroom. You can't have a teacher that will be teaching 65 learners and you expect a 100% pass rate. Let's discuss the issue of a learner ratio, and if possible, we build enough classes or enough school. Also, let's also discuss, maybe revisit the pass rate, especially for maths and physics. Because in a country, physics and maths, it's like now we are saying abantwana mabaphume ku system so that sizokwazi ukuthola abanye. And by the unemployment, because even ama-TVET abanye qualify because of the pass rate. I think it's time we revisit it. The last one, as I conclude, let's also prioritize the ELSIN schools. Because every time when we talk about other schools, but We don't put much for ELSIN learners. We also need to prioritize the ELSIN schools. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you very
Babuso.
much. Siyabonga. Andreas, I wonder if you could make your comments to the questions or comments that have been raised here before I hand over to Ella, because most of them would have also come from this side.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And I listened really with great interest to your questions. I thought these were really very relevant and interesting. The first point I want to make in response to question number 3 is that social and emotional skills do not come as an automatic byproduct of good academic outcomes. I think that's the lesson we can take from Singapore, from Vietnam. At the very same time, and that's the encouraging insight, our data show that actually there are countries that actually have been able to combine holistic development of students. When you look, for example, to Estonia, to Finland, to Japan, you can see students doing both academically well and in terms of social emotional skills. I think the implication from this is that we should not see, academic skills and social emotional skills as two opposing ends on a spectrum, but they're rather two sides of the same coin. And that also has implications for the learning environments. If we want to put emphasis on social emotional skills, for example, on collaborative skills, then our learning environments need to be open to that. They need to encourage collaborative learning. They need to encourage, if we want to enhance critical thinking skills, our learning environments need to give opportunities to students to question the established wisdom of our time. So the design of learning environment is really, really critical to enhance both the cognitive and social and emotional development of young people. And last but not least, I also believe it's very important that our metrics, our measurements, do give appropriate value to the social and emotional development of students. We will only improve what we can see. And if our measurement, our metrics only focus on the cognitive development of students, we're likely to ignore and risk that we do not pay enough attention to the holistic development. And let me just, on the question of 9, on the survey of social emotional skills, this is actually one of the most interesting components of our PISA work now, where we actually look at, things like creativity, like empathy, like collaboration. Some of the findings have been very disturbing. For example, in most countries, we found that 15-year-olds are less creative than 10-year-olds. If I would tell you, your 15-year-olds do worse in mathematics than your 10-year-olds, you will tell me there's something fundamentally wrong with schooling. But that's exactly what we see when we actually look at creativity of young people. Mm-hmm. Because again, our education systems are often designed to make people compliant with our ways of thinking. We teach students something and we expect them to learn it in exactly that way. And then, students lose that capacity to think in alternative ways, to question, and so on. So again, I think the survey on social emotional skills, you can see the same thing with empathy and student well-being. Often 15-year-olds show lower levels of student well-being than 10-year-olds. So our schools develop some skills, but actually often they compromise on others. And again, the survey on social emotional skills is a tool to make those broader skills equally visible and give therefore teachers better tools to design appropriate learning environments and also curricula. I must actually say, this is my last point, the South African curriculum framework, I'm very encouraged, actually does, put due emphasis to the social and emotional development of young people. I think that's very, very, very good. But again, it is the design of the learning environments. It's the way also how teachers are being developed and trained. And it is, last but not least, the way we measure outcomes that will determine whether those intentions translate into, adequate implementation and ultimately adequate outcomes. Thank you again for letting me participate.
Thank you very much, Andreas. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Andreas joining us from the OECD. And some of the questions that have been raised may not be answered by the SACE CEO because they involve the DG and the HODs because they are about resourcing. So stay out of resourcing, CEO. Save yourself.
Yes. Thank you very much, HOD. Let me start with the issue raised by the SGBs. You see, I'm realizing, and I've realized, and having coming from Bloemfontein, from FEDSAS. No. That table understands better. We need to capacitate SGBs. And I'm happy from FEDSAS you are leading that process across the country. We need to be capacitating SGBs to understand the role of DBE, the role of SACE, the role of absolutely everybody across the spectrum. And therefore, I'm not even going to respond to where you will be able to report or not and what's happening, but I'm taking it upon myself. Having started the process in Bloemfontein, I will come to Gauteng and do it across the country. We will do it. But also in terms of regalia, the union will educate you that there is Wednesday, there is not Thursday, there is Saturday, Friday, in terms of their regalia. And they are welcome to do that. So there is no way that you can put punitive measures against them because that's their professional identity, part of their professional identity. I can't remember when is Naptosa, Hema, having its day. So those issues, we need to debate them and discuss them and capacitate each other thoroughly around those. So let me leave all and I'm gonna take your contacts, let's talk outside and make sure that we deal with those. The issues raised, there's an issue coming from online on whether are we vetting against National Child Protection Register so that you can determine who's fit to work with children. Look, the Children's Act, currently, as it stands, it gives access to the employers and not professional bodies. Unlike the amended Criminal Law Sexual Offences Related Matters Act of the DOJC, Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, it has opened access. And therefore, we are able to vet against the National Register for Sexual Offences, but also remember part of the vetting process include the criminal record database of the SAPS. So currently, the National Child Protection Register is with the employers, but we've been taking the discussions with DBE for them to negotiate on our behalf to be able to deal with that. However, we are feeding Part B of the register in terms of those that are struck off in terms of the cases that are involving minors, they are being reported from there. The issue of teacher supply, utilization, and demand, Advocate Masuku, is a complex one. It's a very complex one. I think the research that is being done within the DBE, and I'm not going to even try to respond to that, is beginning to come up with some of the issues that are giving us challenges within the issue of teacher supply, utilization, and demand research. They are not only about the higher education in terms of the demands of the sector, they are also about the resources within the system in terms of whether are teachers being employed that have qualified, whether are we having the right skills, are we having quality issues, and what Dr. Green calls substance issues versus the issues of quantity and all that. But I think within the commission, maybe we need to be looking at that. I would agree with you. From CHE, if you are in the teacher education space, you should be knowing that they are coming with a teacher education review of qualifications of programs. And I think this is an opportunity for us as a sector to look into the thorny issue that we are not biting the bullet. There's an issue around PGCE. Whether we like it or not, higher education institutions have got their own perceptions within the union, within the professions. Everybody have got their own professions. There's no way we can have a dressmaker or a hair maker coming with a PGC qualification want to be registered as a teacher. It's a no-no, DG. However, it's happening. There are higher education institutions when we register, and that is why we can't register without a transcript, because we need to understand what is it that you've done for you to qualify as somebody that needs to be registered. And I agree with you, Advocate Masuku, we need to look into that in terms of the review process of Mr. Tag, the review process of HEQSF, Higher Education Qualifications Framework, and also our trilateral, Michelle will tell you, between DBE, DHET, and SACE should also be taking those issues into account. Yeah, and I think that also the issue around different standards and also issues of Mr. Tech, again, within the commission, that's something that we can look into, because if we're not understanding where the professional teaching standards are sitting, where knowledge and practice standards, where qualification standards are sitting, we'll continue to have a challenge in terms of how do we deal with all these issues within the preparation of a teacher, the continuing professional development, induction, and all those. Hema, thanks for your input, and also Dr. Somnath. I think again, those issues of that you've raised, when we go to the commission, let's debate them. And Hema, we can't divorce teachers from teacher autonomy and teacher agency. However, we need to philosophically understand what teacher autonomy is in relation to the employers. Because if employers are not relaxing certain things, there's no way that teachers can practice teacher autonomy. So those are some of the things, and I understand sometimes you're saying it in the name of equity, leveling the playing fields, DG. However, that doesn't take that. But teacher agency, teacher leadership, teacher distributive leadership needs to happen in schools if certain things are to change and to happen. But also we need to emphasize that ICT is not the be-it-all and everything. Skills for the changing world is not about ICT only. There are still other things that can happen even without ICT, and therefore in our thinking, let's not equate 100% skills for the changing world, competencies and all that with ICT, technology, whatever. Yes, it will be there, we cannot do without it, whatever. However, we need to put it in a correct context. Thank you, Chair, before I speak the whole thing. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. No, thank you, Ntate Msuwe. When Ella was, I met with Ella at the Vets Education Policy Unit. You remember? You remember that? You were still a very young girl then. She says she was 24 years old. 24 years old. I really admire, you know, how she's mellowed and so on, including Bo Godwin and others. And I was still a teacher then in the Northwest. She's done extremely well. Give Ella a big hand of applause. Yeah. Andreas, are you still on the platform? Professor Slasher, are you still or are you gone? I'm sure he's gone. Mr. Msuwe, we need to get Mr. Matthews. Okay. We need to get Andreas to South Africa. This man, we've been trying to get him here in person. I'm avoiding to say physically, because physically would mean other things to other people. Andreas is perceived as an encyclopedia for education by many in the world. So we've really been struggling to get him to South Africa. I wanted to ask him, when is he coming to South Africa? I just want to add on one or two things. Thank you, Ella, for clarifying the issue of ICT. ICT is very important, colleagues. In the digital world, if you don't use ICT as an enabler, as a blifter, as an enabler, ICT is not a quality driver. It's like infrastructure. Infrastructure is not a quality driver. A quality driver is quality teachers, is the curriculum, is the textbooks, is assessment. Those things are called quality drivers, not infrastructure, not ICT. They are enablers. And a competent person explained that very well. But I thought I must just share this with you, especially my colleague who asked about political will. Let me also just advise, it's important because public representatives, their job, where is the chair of the portfolio committee? I must be careful of what I'm going to say. Where is she? She's left. The responsibility of public representatives is to get the resources that are required. That's their job. But disbursement of resources is the responsibility of accounting officers. And dispersing them according to the PFMA. Right? This document called PFMA don't know public representatives. It knows only creatures called accounting officers. So let's get it right. So when we also talk about money and so on, the responsibility of public representatives is to make sure that what they promised is resourced. And once those resources are available, those guys there, called accounting officers, now they have to make sure that the resources are appropriated accordingly. But to cut a long story short, connectivity, out of 447 schools for learners with special education needs, 301 have been connected. 301 have been connected and having been provided with devices that learners with special education needs require. What remains, before you applaud, what remains a challenge, even to public ordinary schools, is the bandwidth, the speed at which connectivity can be utilized for teaching, which is not enough. In the Western Cape, the bandwidth is much better than other parts of the country. So that's the problem that we need to resolve. The bandwidth that we require, we don't require the same level of bandwidth as universities because they use ICT more than us. But our bandwidth has got to be increased, and the experts can explain that even more to you. Now, public ordinary schools, we want to check the issue of the political will. Out of 23,195 schools, 18,520 schools are planned for connectivity. I've given you the update about 447 schools of learners with special education needs, institutions, in other words, special schools in the country. 301 of them, because we said they must be priority number one, special schools. And after that, we go to other schools, including multi-grade schools. So out of 23,195, We've planned to connect 18,520 starting from April 2023. And these are the numbers per province. Eastern Cape, we're planning to connect 4,138 of schools that are not connected. Free State, 802. Gauteng, 1,674. KwaZulu-Natal, 4,695. Limpopo, my colleague was coming from Limpopo, 2,977. Mpumalanga, 1,340. Northern Cape, 545. Northwest, 1,175. Western Cape, 1,174. These numbers are available. We can make them available to anyone who would like to get them. This is connectivity for teaching. Connectivity for administration is there. I'm sure you know about it. Connectivity for administration, all schools should be connected, including those that don't have electricity, and they know how to go about it. So that's, the update that I thought I must give to you. There was an issue about learners with special education needs, whether, the format of teaching and learning, we're restricting them to certain versions and so on. I want to request that the line function will be able to provide that information, Dr. Similani and Mr. Ngobo. But apart from that, colleagues, my humble plea, brothers and sisters, is that there are commissions, as Mr. Musue correctly pointed out. Many of these things must be debated there. If the answers were not provided in the commissions, we come back and sort them out at plenary. We are not doing well on time. We're doing very bad. I don't want you to knock off late like yesterday. We still have to come tomorrow. And please, there are people who have creative ways of getting onto the program to address. When you open up for questions, they use their creativity and innovation to address. And my humble plea, brothers and sisters, for your sake, for our sake, let's cut it to the chase, hit the punchline when we are afforded the opportunity to make comments, and then use the commissions to engage extensively there. So we're going to break for tea immediately. The time is 7 minutes to 11, very bad in terms of time. And instead of affording you 30 minutes, can we be back by 11:15? Is that fine? We break immediately for tea, and we back 11:15. Thank you very much.